It always starts with the paper. Not just any paper. This was the paper. Thick, cream-colored cardstock, heavy enough to stop a low-caliber bullet, with the Cypress Meadows Homeowners Association logo embossed at the top. It looked like a wedding invitation. It felt like a death sentence. I was holding it in my hand, standing in my own driveway on a Tuesday. The mailman, a guy named Gary, who I'm 90% sure is routing my Playboy subscription to his own address, had handed it to me with a look of genuine pity. "Certified," he'd muttered, like a doctor giving a bad diagnosis. I tore it open, right there by the mailbox, which the HOA had also cited me for last month. Unapproved seasonal flag. It was a pirate flag. The first line was all I needed to see. "Dear resident," they don't even use your name. You're just resident, like inmate. It has come to the attention of the Board of Directors that a flagrant violation of the Cypress Meadows Aesthetic Bylaws, Article 3, Section 4.b, is currently taking place on your property. I skimmed the rest. Jargon. Legal threats. Cease and desist. Non-compliant recreational vehicle. Accruing daily fines. I looked up from the letter at The Wanderer, my 2018 Winnebago, my pride and joy, my ticket out of this beige hellscape on the weekends. It was parked on the side pad I'd poured myself, tucked neatly behind the fence line, just like the bylaws said. Mostly. The front bumper might have been peaking. 72 hours, I muttered. They were giving me 72 hours to vacate the premises with my RV, or the fines would begin. $200. A day. "This is tyranny," I said to a passing squirrel. The squirrel, sensibly, ran up a tree. I walked inside, the letter already crinkling in my clenched fist. My wife, Sarah, was at the kitchen island, scrolling through her tablet, blissfully unaware that our domestic tranquility was about to be shattered. "We got another love letter from the Beige Inquisition," I announced. Sarah sighed, not looking up. "What is it this time? Is the grass 003 inches too high? Did you use a non-sanctioned brand of fertilizer? Worse, they're coming for the Wanderer." That got her attention. She looked up, her "Oh, Frank" face firmly in place. "What did you do?" "Me? I didn't do anything. I parked, in my own driveway. It's an outrage." I read the letter aloud, using my most dramatic, booming voice. "Flagrant violation. Aesthetic harmony. Must be removed." "Frank," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Did you park it on the hydrangeas again?" "It was near the hydrangeas, and they looked thirsty. The runoff from the AC unit was probably doing them a favor." I tossed the letter on the counter. "This isn't about the hydrangeas, Sarah. This is about her. Brenda. Brenda von Hammersmark, HOA president. A woman who looked like she was permanently smelling spoiled milk. A woman who had, I swear to God, measured the exact distance between my mailbox and the curb. A woman whose beige pantsuits were so starched they could probably deflect small arms fire. "She's been watching me," I said, pointing out the window. "I can feel her. Probably has binoculars. A tactical drone, maybe. She's been waiting for this. The RV is my one joy, and she can't stand it." "Or," Sarah offered, "it's big, and the bylaws say you can't keep it here for more than 24 hours, which you've been doing for 3 weeks. "It's a semantics issue." I slammed my hand on the counter. "This is my house, my castle, my slightly over-leveraged castle. And she's not winning. Not this time." Sarah just sipped her coffee. "So what are you going to do? Move it to the storage lot?" I looked at her, wounded. Storage? For $300 a month? To be locked behind a chain-link fence? No. No, the Wanderer deserves better. I deserve better. Well, you have 72 hours, she said, tapping the letter. So your big protest better happen fast, because I am not paying $200 a day just so you can annoy Brenda. I snatched the letter back. Fine. She wants a war? She's getting a war. She's just not going to like the uniform. That night, I didn't sleep. I stewed, I paced, I poured a healthy 2 fingers of cheap whiskey into a coffee mug and sat at my desk, the glow of the monitor illuminating my righteous fury. Sarah had long since gone to bed, muttering something about adult solutions and just moving the damn thing. Cowardice. I, on the other hand, was deep in the trenches. I had the Cypress Meadows HOA covenants, conditions and restrictions, CC&Rs, open in a 94-page PDF. It was a masterpiece of suburban oppression. A novel of no. No vehicles over 3/4 ton. No commercial lettering. No boats, campers, trailers, or recreational vehicles shall be parked for more than 24 hours for the purpose of loading, unloading. I scoured the document for loopholes. I was a textual archaeologist, dusting off phrases, looking for a crack. What, I muttered to myself, is the legal definition of recreational vehicle? I found it. A vehicle, whether self-propelled or towed, designed and or used as a temporary dwelling for travel, recreation, and or vacation use. Ha! I pointed at the screen. It's not temporary if I live in it. What if I move my bed in there? Then it's a permanent dwelling unit. Checkmate. Brenda. I Googled living in an RV in my own driveway. The search results were discouraging. Apparently, the man had already thought of that. My whiskey was gone. My hope was dwindling. I was just another suburban schlub, beaten down by the beige Inquisition. I'd have to move the Wanderer to that soulless storage lot on the highway. Brenda would win. She'd be power-walking by my house tomorrow, a little smirk on her face, her visor pulled low like a conqueror. I slumped, defeated, and idly clicked a bookmark I'd saved months ago. Govdeals.com, a government surplus auction site. I'd been on a weird prepper kick, looking at old military Humvees and MREs. I scrolled. Old police cruisers, filing cabinets, a pallet of confiscated slot machines, a Zamboni from a defunct ice rink, and then I saw it. Lot 44, 2005, Thomas-built 72-passenger school bus. Engine, 5.9L Cummins. Mileage, 214,000. Runs, poorly. Interior, condition. Fare. Smell, stale crayons and despair. Current bid, $1,200. I just stared at it. It was magnificent. It was obnoxiously, aggressively, gloriously yellow. It was 40 feet long. It was a rolling middle finger. I felt a slow, dangerous smile spread across my face, a smile that hadn't been seen since I replaced my neighbor's garden gnome with a small gargoyle. I grabbed the HOA bylaws PDF and hit +F. I typed in bus. No results found. I typed in school. No results found. I typed in public transit. No results found. I looked back at the definition of recreational vehicle. Designed as a temporary dwelling. A school bus isn't designed as a dwelling. It's designed to transport children. It's not a camper. It's not a trailer. It's not, by their own definition, an RV. It was technically just a very, very large truck. Wait, no vehicles over 3/4 ton. Damn it. I scowled. Back to the drawing board. I scrolled down. Wait. The fine print. No vehicles over 3/4 ton, with the exception of vehicles performing temporary commercial or community services, HOA delivery trucks, moving vans, contractor vehicles. I looked at the bus. I looked at the bylaw. My heart was pounding. It was 3:17 a.m. I crept into the bedroom. Sarah was asleep, breathing peacefully. I gently shook her shoulder. What's it? She mumbled. Honey, wake up. Frank, it's 3 in the morning. Is the house on fire? No. Quick question. Hypothetical. Does the HOA have any rules against public transit? She blinked, her eyes struggling to focus. What? No, I don't. Frank, what did you do? Nothing. Nothing yet. Just a legal query. Or community services? I added. Frank, go to sleep. She rolled over, pulling the covers with her. No reason, I whispered. Go back to sleep. I tiptoed back to my office. I looked at lot number 44. The buy it now price was $2,200. I clicked. The next 72 hours were a blur of logistics. The first order of business was to save the Wanderer. I drove it, under cover of darkness, to my friend Dave's farm, 20 miles out of town. It felt like I was smuggling a refugee. As I pulled out of the neighborhood, I'm almost certain I saw a curtain twitch in Brenda's window. For 3 days, my driveway was conspicuously, beautifully, compliantly empty. On Friday morning, I was outside pruning a rose bush, with non-sanctioned shears, I might add, when Brenda did her morning power walk. She slowed as she passed my house. She looked at the empty driveway pad. She looked at me. She didn't stop, but she gave me a short, tight-lipped nod. It was a nod of victory, of smug, beige-clad triumph. I just smiled and waved. Morning, Brenda. Beautiful day for community governance. She flinched and walked faster. I waited. At 11:00 a.m., I heard it. It wasn't a normal engine sound. It was a deep, guttural rumble, a diesel groan that rattled the decorative flamingos on my neighbor's lawn. A massive 18-wheeler flatbed tow truck was creeping down Cypress Meadows Lane, a street designed for nothing larger than a sensible sedan. It stopped right in front of my house. The air brakes hissed, a long, dramatic psst that I felt in my chest. It sounded like an angel sighing, or maybe a dragon. And there it was. My bus. It was so much bigger in person. It was 40 feet of pure, unadulterated, glorious yellow. The rust spots over the wheel wells were a lovely shade of burnt sienna. The dent over the left headlight gave it character. The buy it now price, I realized, was probably because it smelled so intensely of stale milk and regret that no one else would bid. The tow truck driver, a guy with a magnificent beer belly and a Skoll logo tattooed on his forearm, hopped down. He looked at the bus. He looked at my pristine beige and taupe house. He looked at the perfectly manicured lawn across the street. "All right, pal," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Where do you want this? Right there," I said, pointing to the empty driveway pad. "Straight in. And if you could, make sure it's perfectly aligned with the living room window of the house across the street." I pointed at Brenda's. The driver squinted at me. You doing a Mad Max thing? 'Cause I respect that. Just a community project, I said. It took him 20 minutes of groaning hydraulics and shouted instructions to get it unloaded. When the flatbed pulled away, the bus just sat there. It was so big, it was blocking the sun from my own kitchen. It was perfect. I paid the man. He gave me a thumbs up. Good luck, brother. The moment his truck turned the corner, I went to my garage. I had work to do. Sarah, bless her, was watching from the front doorway, holding a coffee mug with both hands. Her face was a perfect mask of, I can't believe this is my life. I pulled out a 2-foot-tall A stencil. I pulled out a can of high-gloss exterior white spray paint. I started on the right side, the side facing the street, the side facing Brenda's house. HOA, a little space. FIELD, a little space. TRIP. I stood back. The white paint dripped slightly. It was beautiful. You're going to get us arrested, Frank, Sarah said, her voice flat. I turned to her, a magnificent, paint-flecked grin on my face. Arrested for what, my love? Promoting community? Fostering a love of education? I'm a goddamn civic leader. The next morning, the neighborhood text chain exploded. Sarah, who is a silent observer in the Cypress Meadows neighbors chat, was reading the messages to me while I made pancakes. Oh God, she said, scrolling. What? I asked, flipping a pancake with a little too much flair. Is that a bus? She read. At Frank's house, from Joan in 3B. Mike at 7A says it looks like a school bus. Did the district change the route? Oh my God, you guys. You have to see what's painted on the side. This is from Susan. See? People are excited, I said. Community engagement. Frank, the next message is just 3 shocked face emojis and a text from Brenda that says, the board is aware and handling it. Handling it? Is she arranging the sign-up sheet? I should probably print some. I didn't even have time to pour the syrup. 8:02 a.m. My doorbell rang. Not a polite little ding-dong. It was a machine gun ding-dong, ding-dong, ding-dong. I opened the door, a spatula still in my hand. Brenda von Hammersmark was vibrating on my welcome mat. She was wearing a turquoise jogging suit that was so tight it looked vacuum-sealed. Her visor was pulled low. She was clenching a clipboard so hard her knuckles were, well, white. Frank, she said. Her voice was a low hiss. Brenda, good morning. Pancake? I offered the spatula. She ignored it. Frank. What? She gestured at the yellow behemoth behind her. Is that? Oh, that? I said, feigning surprise. That's the bus. I see that it's a bus. It's the new community outreach vehicle, I said, leaning against the doorframe. All smiles. For the field trips. Brenda's eye twitched. It was a small, rapid-fire spasm that gave me immense satisfaction. What? She said, her voice dropping another octave. Field trips? The HOA field trips, I said, pointing to the side of the bus. See the sign? I'm just storing it. I assumed you'd be sending out the itinerary later. We're all very excited. Are we doing the zoo or the historical pretzel museum first? Because my vote is for the pretzel museum. More educational. Brenda looked from me to the bus and back. I could see the gears turning in her head. Her entire attack plan, the non-compliant RV script, was now useless. This is a violation, she sputtered, finally finding her footing. It's commercial. It's a commercial vehicle. Is it? I tilted my head. I'm not selling anything. I didn't pay for it with HOA funds. I'm just volunteering, storing the vehicle, free of charge, I might add. Think of the savings to the community, unless you count community spirit, of course. And that, Brenda, is priceless. It's over 3/4 ton, she shrieked, finally landing on a real violation. Ah, but you see, that's the genius part, I said, wagging my spatula. I read the bylaws, your bylaws, Section 4.g, vehicles performing temporary community services. And what, I said, gesturing broadly, is a greater community service than education? Then, field trips? She was stuck. I had her. The HOA field trip sign wasn't just a joke. It was a legal shield, a big 40-foot-long, spray-painted shield. She couldn't fine me for operating her own alleged program. That would be mismanagement. This is not, she seethed. The end of this. I am calling the city. I am calling the police. Great. Ask them if they have a preference on the pretzel museum. I'm trying to get a head count. She made a sound like a kettle boiling, spun on her surgically enhanced jogging shoes, and marched back across the street. Well, I said to Sarah, who was just inside the foyer, shaking her head. I think that went well. She's going to find a way to have us evicted, Frank. I hope you're happy. Happy? I'm thrilled. Now, seriously, where are we on those sign-up sheets? Brenda, true to her word, was not messing around. 2 hours later, I was in the front yard, trying to figure out how to open the bus's giant folding door, when a police cruiser rolled up and parked right behind the bus's non-existent rear bumper. 2 of Cypress Meadows' finest stepped out. The first was Officer Ramirez. He was an older guy, maybe late 50s, with a magnificent mustache and a weary look in his eyes that said, I have seen every stupid thing a human can do. The second was Officer Jensen. He was young, crew-cut, and had that I just graduated and I love rules energy. He was already writing on his notepad before he even got to my lawn. Good morning, officers, I said, giving them my best law-abiding citizen smile. Sir, Officer Jensen said, stopping a respectful 6 feet away. Are you the owner of this vehicle? I am. Well, I'm the steward of it, for the community. Frank Petrucci. Nice to meet you. We got a complaint, Mr. Petrucci, Jensen continued, all business. A complaint about an unauthorized and unregistered commercial vehicle parked in a residential zone. A complaint? I acted shocked. Oh no. Was it Brenda? Brenda von Hammersmark? She seems a little confused about the new community program. She is the president, but I think the logistics are just overwhelming her. Officer Ramirez, who had been silently looking at the bus, now looked at me. His mustache twitched. What, community program is that, sir? Ramirez asked, his voice deadpan. The HOA field trip, I said, pointing to the sign. We're all very excited. I'm the driver, I guess. We're still working out the insurance details before we take the kids, of course. Safety first. Officer Jensen was not amused. He looked at his notepad. Sir, the complainant, Mrs. von Hammersmark, said you were, and I quote, converting it into a derelict party bus, and that you threatened her with pretzels. Threatened her? With pretzels? I laughed. No, I just said the pretzel museum was my first choice. And party bus? Officers, please. I finally managed to wrench the folding door open with a horrible screech. Take a look. Does this look like a party? They peered inside. The interior was a wasteland of cracked green vinyl, 60-odd million scuff marks, and the overwhelming aroma of old juice boxes. It's strictly educational, I said. Look, the stop sign still works and everything. It's very safe. I reached in and pulled the long lever by the driver's seat. The stop sign on the side of the bus flapped out with a rusty clack. I may have accidentally hit Officer Jensen in the shoulder with it. "Sorry, son," I said, retracting it. Jensen stepped back, rubbing his arm, and looked at Ramirez. Officer Ramirez was looking at me. He was looking at the bus. He was looking across the street, where Brenda was now shamelessly watching from her living room window, her silhouette visible behind the blinds. Ramirez let out a long, slow sigh. He turned to me. "Mr. Petrucci," he said, "is this bus legally registered to you?" "Yes, sir. Got the temporary tags right in the window. Arrived this morning." "And is it insured?" "Absolutely. The antique vehicle policy was surprisingly affordable." "And is it parked entirely on your property?" "To the inch, officer. I checked." Ramirez nodded, a tiny, almost imperceptible smile hidden in his mustache. He turned to his partner. "Jensen, it's on private property. It's registered. It's not leaking fluids or on fire." "But sir," Jensen protested, "it's a bus. It's a blight. The sign." "The sign is speech, son," Ramirez said. "Might be unusual speech, but it's speech. As for the rest," he looked back at me. "Sir, as long as you're not, running an actual business out of it, charging fares, selling pretzels." "Heaven forbid," I said. "Then this is a civil matter. It's between you and your homeowners association." He tapped his notebook. "There's no criminal violation here." "Well, that's a relief," I said. "We're all on the same team here, just trying to foster community." "Right," Ramirez said. He tipped his hat. "You have a good day, sir. Try not to, hit anyone else with the sign." "Will do, officer. Thanks for stopping by. Tell your friends to sign up." They walked back to their cruiser. I heard Jensen say, "But the blight," and Ramirez reply, "Kid, you ain't seen blight." As they pulled away, I turned and gave Brenda's window a cheerful two-fingered wave. The blinds snapped shut so fast they probably broke the cord. The victory was sweet. I was, for the moment, untouchable. The city couldn't get me. The cops wouldn't get me. And Brenda was, for now, back in her beige castle, plotting. But my win had created a new problem. I now owned a 40-foot, 20-year-old, non-functional school bus that smelled like a locker room. My original plan was just to have it, to let it sit there as a monument to Brenda's failure. But now I had a better idea. If I was going to have a bus, I was going to make it awesome. The schooly idea, a school bus conversion, had been a joke. But why? Why not make it a high-end RV? A better RV than the Wanderer. One with hardwood floors, a kitchenette, and maybe a small, tasteful disco ball. I'd just do it right here in the driveway. It would be my new project. The problem was, I am to handy what a goldfish is to quantum physics. I can barely hang a picture. I needed professionals. Or, as it turned out, I needed Skeeter. I found Skeeter on Craigslist under an ad that just said, "We build stuff. No job too weird. Cash." Skeeter showed up a day later in a 1998 Ford Ranger that looked like it had been salvaged from a riverbed. The truck was blasting Motley Crue so loud that I felt it in my fillings. Skeeter himself was a thin, wiry man who looked to be anywhere from 30 to 60. He wore a greasy bandana, a cut-off Metallica shirt, and had a single, magnificent, tobacco-stained tooth in the front of his mouth. He got out of his truck, looked at the bus, and let out a low whistle. "Ooh-wee, brother," he said, his voice a gravelly rasp. All right, a schoolie in Cypress Meadows. He looked around at the identical beige houses. Man, you got some brass ones. I like it. You think you can help? I asked. Help? Skeeter cackled. Brother, I can put a hot tub in the back of this thing if you want. We'll have to reinforce the chassis, but I know a guy. Let's start with the seats, I said. They all have to come out. Then I want to put in a kitchenette over there, and a small bathroom in the back. Easy peasy, Skeeter said. Gonna be loud, though. Ripping these seats out. They're bolted to the frame. We're gonna need the angle grinder. And probably the Sawzall. And maybe some percussive persuasion. He held up a 10-pound sledgehammer from the bed of his truck. Skeeter, I said, putting my arm around his bony shoulder. The noise is half the point. The renovation began the next morning, a Saturday, at 7:00 a.m. The sound of an industrial-grade angle grinder hitting a steel bus frame is not a subtle one. It's a high-pitched, apocalyptic screech that shreds the very fabric of suburban tranquility. Skeeter, bless his heart, had also brought his own sound system. A giant, paint-splattered boombox that he put on the roof of the bus. So, at 7:00 a.m., the entire neighborhood was treated to the dual symphony of Dr. Feelgood and the sound of a dying dragon. The letters started appearing in my mailbox by noon. They had stopped using the fancy cream-colored cardstock. These were printed on cheap white paper, stuffed in plain envelopes. They were coming fast. Unauthorized construction. Noise violation. 8-hour continuous. Hazardous materials. This was after Skeeter tried to weld something and set a small pile of old crayon-filled dust on fire. I taped them to the inside of the bus. We were creating a wall of motivation. For 2 weeks, Skeeter and his crew, which consisted of one very confused-looking teenager named D-Rod, turned my driveway into a disaster zone. The bus was now gutted. The seats were in a mangled pile on my lawn. We had cut a hole in the roof for a future skylight. Skeeter's idea. Brenda was losing her mind. She would stand on her porch, just watching. She wasn't yelling anymore. It was worse. It was a cold, calculating stare. The fines were piling up. I was ignoring them, but Sarah was not. One evening, Skeeter had finally left. The bus was a hollowed-out metal tube. I was sitting inside it on a lawn chair, drinking a beer, admiring the potential. Sarah walked in, holding a thick stack of mail. "Frank," she said. Her voice was quiet. Dangerously quiet. "Hey, honey, look, Skeeter says we can put the beadboard up tomorrow. It's gonna look so rustic. You'll love—" "Frank, stop." She held up the mail. "This isn't funny anymore. This is a certified letter, not from the HOA, from their lawyers." I put my beer down. "It's a consolidated fine," she said, her voice shaking a little. "They're fining us for the construction, the noise, the inoperable vehicle, the aesthetic nuisance. Frank, it's $4,800. And they're putting a lien on the house if we don't pay, and remedy the situation in 15 days. The word lien sucked the air out of the bus. It's a bluff," I stammered. They can, Frank. They absolutely can. We signed the CC&Rs. We agreed to this. You've pushed it too far. This was funny when it was just annoying Brenda. This is our house." She looked at me, and her anger was gone, replaced by a look of genuine fear. "Please, Frank, just stop. Get rid of it. We'll pay the fine. Just make it go away." She dropped the letters at my feet and walked out of the bus. I heard the front door of the house slam shut. I sat there alone in the dark, hollowed-out bus. The smell of rust and old crayons was gone, replaced by the acrid smell of burnt metal. She was right. I'd won the battle with the cops, but I'd just given Brenda the ammunition she needed to win the war. I was cornered. I was beaten. My stupid, glorious yellow middle finger was about to cost me my home. I looked at the pile of junk. I looked at the hole in the roof. And then my eyes landed on the side of the bus, still visible in the twilight. HOA field trip. The lie had gotten me into this. Maybe, just maybe, a bigger lie could get me out. A terrible, beautiful, magnificent idea began to form. I wasn't cornered. I just needed a new plan. The next morning, I didn't call Skeeter. I went to my computer. But I wasn't looking at schooly designs. I was on a travel website, downloading free, high-resolution, glossy photos of outlet malls, casinos, and pretzel factories. I spent 3 hours designing a single-page, tri-fold brochure. I used a fancy script font. I used the official Cypress Meadows beige and maroon color scheme. Cypress Meadows Community Excursions. We're going places. I printed 50 of them on Sarah's good photo paper. Then I printed out a fresh sign-up sheet. A real one. Inaugural field trip, The Grove. City Premium Outlets. Saturday, October 12th. Bus leaves 9:00 a.m. Free soft pretzel voucher for the first 20 sign-ups. This was my new offensive. Frank's Gambit. I put on my best polo shirt. I combed my hair, and I went door to door. I skipped Brenda's house, obviously. I started with Mr. Henderson down in 5B. Henderson was a retired accountant who had once been fined $50 for having a non-conforming wind chime. He was a man with a simmering, repressed rage. He was my perfect target. I rang his bell. He opened the door a crack, peering at me. Frank? Everything all right?" he asked, glancing nervously at the bus down the street. "Better than all right, Mr. Henderson. It's a great day." I beamed, handing him a brochure. "Just wanted to see if you and Mrs. Henderson wanted to sign up for the first official HOA field trip. We're finalizing the head count for the bus." Henderson looked at the glossy brochure. He looked at me. I don't know, Frank. I heard, well, Brenda said that whole bus thing was just, you being you. A joke?" I feigned mortal offense. "Mr. Henderson, does this look like a joke?" I held up the brochure. "We've got a fully costed itinerary. The bus," I said, lying through my teeth, "just passed its multi-point safety inspection. Skeeter, my mechanic, is top-notch. And look," I tapped the paper, "free pretzels." Henderson was wavering. I could see it. He hated Brenda. The wind chime incident had become neighborhood lore. "Brenda's just the logistics coordinator," I said, lowering my voice. "This is for the community. A chance for us all to get together. Away from, I gestured vaguely at the beige uniformity. "Besides, don't you want to get a look at the new Yankee Candle store before the holiday rush?" He looked at the brochure again. He looked at my clipboard. "A free pretzel, you said?" "A voucher," I clarified. "Good for one classic pretzel or cinnamon sugar." "All right," he said, taking my pen. "Put me and Martha down. 9:00 a.m., you said?" I almost hugged him. He was the first domino. I went to the Gables in 7A, who had been cited for their overly exuberant holiday decorations. They signed up. I went to the Millers in 2C, who were forced to repaint their front door because it was unapproved semi-gloss instead of sanctioned eggshell. They signed up. By the end of the day, I wasn't just a lunatic with a bus. I was a community organizer. I had 15 signatures on my clipboard, 15 residents who had all just agreed on paper that the HOA field trip was a real, scheduled, and anticipated event. I had witnesses. I had co-conspirators. I went home and taped the sign-up sheet to my front door, right next to the lawyer's scary letter. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, watching me from the kitchen. "I'm building an army, honey," I said, "and we're arming them with pretzels." The sign-up sheet was the bomb. Brenda must have seen it on her evening patrol. The very next day, a new, furious-looking notice was posted on every mailbox. Emergency HOA meeting. Tonight. 8:00 p.m. Community Clubhouse. Attendance mandatory. The mandatory was underlined 3 times. This was it. The showdown. It was a show trial, and I was the guest of honor. At 7:50 p.m., Sarah and I walked into the clubhouse. The room was sterile, beige, and smelled faintly of floor wax and instant coffee. 30 of my neighbors were there, all looking nervous. At the front of the room was a podium, a projector screen, and Brenda. She was flanked by the 2 other board members, a terrified-looking man named Gary and a severe-looking woman named Doris. Brenda was not in her jogging suit. She was wearing a navy blue blazer, her "I mean business" armor. She stared at me as I walked in. I just smiled, held up my clipboard, and took a seat in the front row. "Thank you all for coming," Brenda began, her voice tight with rage. "It has come to our attention that certain residents have decided to make a mockery of our community bylaws." The projector flickered on. The first slide was a picture of my bus. The second slide was a close-up of the HOA field trip sign. The third slide was a list. A long, scrolling list of every fine, every violation, every single complaint. It was her PowerPoint of my doom. "Mr. Petrucci," she said, pointing a laser pointer at my chest, "has accrued over $4,000 in fines. He has brought in unlicensed contractors. He has created a public nuisance. He has, in short, declared war on this community." People were muttering. I could feel the room turning on me. My pretzel army was looking shaky. This circus," she said, her voice rising, "ends tonight. The board has already voted. We are enforcing the lien. We are having the vehicle towed and impounded at Mr. Petrucci's expense. This is no longer a joke." She finished her speech. The room was dead silent. She looked at me, a smug, reptilian smile on her face. "Do you have anything to say for yourself, Frank, before we move to the next item of business?" This was my moment. I stood up slowly. I picked up my clipboard. "Yes, Brenda, I do," I said, my voice projecting to the back of the room. "And I'm so glad you called this meeting. This is the perfect venue." I held up my clipboard. I was just about to post the final itinerary for Saturday's trip, but I see we have a small but wonderful problem. Brenda's smile faltered. "The problem, Frank, is your bus." No, I said, shaking my head. "The problem is that we're oversubscribed. We only have a 72-passenger bus, and as you can see," I held up the list, "I've already got 15 people signed up for the Outlet Mall trip. Which is great. Fantastic turnout for our first event." A few people in the crowd murmured. Mr. Henderson nodded. But, I continued, Mrs. Gable in 4B, I pointed to her. She doesn't want to go to the outlet mall. She really wants to go to the casino. And the Millers want to do the pretzel museum. So I'm here tonight to officially ask the board, you, Brenda, as the program's coordinator, to approve the budget for a second bus. The silence in the room was no longer stunned. It was electrical. Brenda's face went from beige to white to a fascinating shade of mottled purple. A second bus? She stammered. Well, yeah. We can't leave Mrs. Gable behind, can we? That's not community spirit. Or, I said, tapping my chin, we could just alternate. Outlet mall this week, casino next week. But we need to get the insurance rider approved, which you, as president, need to sign off on. Brenda's trap had snapped back on her. Her whole PowerPoint was about me, the rebel. But I wasn't a rebel. I was an event planner. She couldn't deny the HOA field trip without telling 15 residents, voters, that their trip was canceled. She couldn't accept it because it was a 30-year-old bus in my driveway. She was checkmated. Mr. Henderson stood up. I am looking forward to the outlet mall, Brenda, he said, its voice surprisingly firm. Martha already has her coupons ready, and the pretzel voucher is a nice touch, Frank. Thank you, Mr. Henderson. We aim to please. Suddenly, Mrs. Gable spoke up. I agree with Frank. The casino is a much better destination. They have a buffet. The outlet mall has a Sparrow, someone else yelled. Within seconds, the room wasn't about my finds. It was a full-blown debate about destinations. The entire meeting dissolved into chaos. Brenda was banging her gavel, a tiny, useless wooden hammer, shouting, "Order! Order! This is not the topic!" But it was too late. She had lost the room. She had lost the war. I just stood by the door, clipboard in hand, and watched the beautiful pretzel-fueled anarchy I had created. The emergency meeting was a disaster for the board. The next day, I received a very quiet, very polite phone call from Gary, the terrified-looking board member. Not from Brenda. A private negotiation was held, in my living room, over coffee, served by Sarah, who was now vibrating with suppressed laughter. My terms were simple. First, all fines, every single trumped-up dollar, were dropped, wiped from the record. Second, the lawyer's letter and the threat of a lien were to be rescinded with a formal written apology. Third, a new bylaw was to be drafted. We called it the Franklin Proviso. It specifically allowed for one RV, mine, the Wanderer, to be parked on my driveway pad year-round in recognition of outstanding community service. In exchange, I had to get rid of the bus. It was a bittersweet victory. The final scene was 2 days later. I was in the driver's seat of the bus. The engine, after 3 days of Skeeter's tinkering, actually turned over with a roar that shook the house. Sarah climbed up the steps and sat in the front passenger seat. "So," she said, buckling a seatbelt, "that was probably 50% grime." "Where are you taking it? The junkyard?" "Junkyard?" I said, offended. "Heavens no. This is a classic. A collector's item. I sold it." "You sold it?" she said, her eyes wide. "To who? Who would buy this thing?" I just smiled, wrestled the giant steering wheel to the left, and pulled the hissing air brake lever. The bus lurched out of the driveway one last time. We drove down Cypress Meadows Lane. As we passed Brenda's house, her blinds were drawn. A total eclipse. I drove us out of the neighborhood onto the main highway and pulled into the parking lot of a dusty, neon-lit sports bar called The Dugout. Skeeter was waiting outside, drinking a beer. "She's beautiful, Frank," he yelled over the idling engine. "The boys and I are going to turn this into the ultimate tailgating machine. We're putting the hot tub in first." I shook his hand, handed him the keys, and he handed me a surprisingly thick envelope of cash. Sarah and I drove home in her quiet, comfortable, boring sedan. As we pulled into the driveway, I saw it. My friend Dave had dropped it off an hour ago. The Wanderer, my Winnebago, parked perfectly on its pad. It was clean, it was quiet, and it was 100% legal. I got out, beer in hand, and looked at my house. My castle. "You know," I said to Sarah as she linked her arm through mine, "I'm really going to miss that bus." I took a sip of my beer and looked over at Brenda's dark, silent house. "I hear that outlet mall has a fantastic Cinnabon. Shame we never got to go."